We have some brand new Netflix Avatar promo material to discuss today, and there's tons of it. We've got new photos from the episodes, an interview with the cast, mini trailers of Aang and Katara, and lastly, we have some news regarding Netflix's future season 2 plans. So let's dive right in to the images first. As you can see right here, we've got a simple image of Aang, Katara, Sokka just standing in a room. Aang is smiling, and I can assume that they're talking with Teo and his father, the Mechanist. The room looks similar to the Mechanist photo that dropped months ago, so that's what I'm assuming. Next up, we have a photo of Iroh and Zuko, and it's likely Iroh giving his nephew some advice, some wisdom, while they're in his room on the ship. Or it's entirely possible that they're just looking at the map to track the whereabouts of the Avatar. He not only did this in the original series, but as you see behind him, there was also that Yang Chin paper in the trailer, so it's entirely possible they're just figuring out where Aang is gonna go next. But that's not the only photo of Iroh we have to go over, as there's a poster of him, and here he is standing on the ship, and he's probably training Zuko because he does have a bit of a serious stare, and there's a sun on the side of the poster, like the Katara and Sokka posters, which I thought was a nice touch. Moving on to Azula, we've got a cool poster of her right here. She's in the lightning bending stance like in book 2, and there's obviously fire behind her. Now, this isn't blue fire, and I know many people wanted this, but if you want it, there's actually a fan edit on Twitter. But there's a second photo that dropped today, and we see Azula is holding a scroll, and it's likely that she got it from her father. It's a mission, and this mission may involve her doing archery like we saw in the trailer. And honestly, I think this photo connects to one of the topics that was discussed in the EU interview. Here's what they said, quote, "The presence of their father is what torments both Zuko and his sister, Princess Azula. Ozai is always watching and always judging," says Daniel Dae Kim. So you get a sense of how stifling this family can be. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, but you can feel him whenever you see Zuko or Azula. "A lot of the OG series was through the eyes of Zuko," Yu says. "I feel like our show lets Azula and Ozai have their own start to their story before all the stuff we know them to do later on. We get to see her origin story, which is really cool, and I completely agree." Now, to add on to Ozai a little bit, Albert Kim explained that he's shown so early because he's an accomplished firebender, and we actually get to see his firebending abilities on full display. So rather than him being a mysterious figure until book 3, they decided to have him there from the start. Now, I may be overhyping him too soon, but I think he could potentially be way cooler, and you may invest more time into him than the animated Ozai. But that's mainly because we didn't really get to know him as a character. He was just this monster, and of course he is, but now with this new book 1 context, we can see him grow into that role over the course of 3 seasons. Next up, we have a photo of Suki training Sokka. She's wearing her face makeup, unlike in the trailer, so I do suspect there's going to be more scenes between them, and I hope they can nail the comedy between the two. We've seen them do great with comedy thus far, and I hope their dynamic is handled well because it was one of the greatest relationships in the original series, so we'll have to see how that's done. Now, while we're on the topic of Sokka, Ian Owsley in the EW interview did explain with Kyo Dio about the fact that they're not going to be making Sokka sexist like he was in the original series. I feel like there was a lot of moments in the original series that were iffy. Owsley agrees with Kyo Dio. Yeah, totally. There were things that were redirected just because it might play a little differently in live action. As you can see, the next scene, we have Aang reading a book, and I'm not exactly sure what the context is, but I'm sure we'll be finding out soon. Lastly, we have a scene that feels once again like a one-to-one from the original. We have Katara and Jet here. It's right after Jet and Katara took down the Fire Nation soldiers, and you have Katara looking at him a certain way. We can see that she's starting to develop a bit of a crush on Jet, of course. And we're not really on the topic of the interview, but there is a video of the cast breaking things down, just talking about the series and behind the scenes and all that stuff. And during this, Dallas Liu talked about him being in the Kyoshi Island episode. So I guess one of my assumptions in the last video, where Zhao comes into third party of the fight, is very likely. Anyways, continuing on, Albert Kim did come out and explain that there's gonna be a time jump, and this is obviously due to the cast themselves. Gordon Cormier's voice obviously sounds different. The cast is aging up. It's been a couple years already, and by the time the series is over, they're gonna be way older. Now, there has been some rumors of them filming books 2 and 3 back to back. That isn't 100% confirmed. We're not sure about that, but we're not only gonna have a time jump between seasons, but they're also going out of their way to avoid mentioning the comet. Of course, we're gonna have it in the flashbacks when the Fire Nation attacks, but they're not gonna be having Roku explain the time limit. There's not gonna be a comet by the end of summer. It's either gonna come at any moment, or it's gonna come maybe 3 years from now, like the Forbidden movie had planned so that they could release the movies over the years. That's probably what they're gonna do, one of those two things, and I think this is good because it'll let the show breathe a bit more, and I've saved the best for last. We have to go over these brand new mini trailers. We've got the first one, which is of Aang, and he's talking with Monk Gyatso, and I think it's a continuation from what we saw in the teaser trailer and the official trailer because there was a Monk Gyatso voiceover, and we get get to see a HD version of Monk Gyatso because there was a leaked image earlier this year and it wasn't all that great, but it was nice to see it. Now we see him fully. Aang is explaining he has no desire to be the Avatar. He doesn't want to be special, but Gyatso is explaining that he is. And also we get to see a brief shot of Aang airbending. Katara's watching him, and that's a nice segue into the next one, which is Katara's trailer. We hear Aang excited saying, "You're a waterbender," and we see the clip of Katara waterbending that was on the Master Your Element website a few days ago, but this time we actually get to see where the water is going. We get an extra pan of Zuko. It goes really quickly, but you can see him shooting fire at her. It's all happening right here. There's a second one of her waterbending as well. We can also see that she's holding the waterbending scroll. We also see that she's in the Southern Water Tribe with everybody else. She's talking about it being their duty to protect the Avatar, and we can assume that this is in the first few episodes of this series. But that's all the news for now. I expect we're probably going to get a Sokka and Zuko trailer tomorrow and Wednesday. They're probably going to go one trailer a day. I may make a community post, a short, or a video. So if you want to be up to date on the latest Avatar news, you're going to want to make sure you stay tuned on the channel.